You were never meant to hear this. There is a place so forbidden. Not even satellite maps dare to acknowledge it. A piece of land swallowed by the sea and secrecy, blacked out, omitted, and erased. But it exists, known only in fragmented whispers. The island goes by no official name. Mariners call it the Hollow Shore. Intelligence files redacted its coordinates decades ago. And every man who set foot on it has never come back. Not once. You'll find no documentation of its flora, no zoological tags, no data. And yet, the island is ancient, older than empires, older than the idea of civilization itself. It's not lost. It's hidden, because the truth it holds is too dangerous to surface. We begin our descent here, where legend, geopolitics, and psychological warfare collide. Not in fantasy, but in real Black Ops archives, forgotten ship logs, and disturbing memoirs buried beneath the Vatican's secret archives and the Pentagon's denied missions. You've been lied to, not by chance, but by design, and now I'm pulling you into the abyss. Let me be clear, this isn't entertainment. This is the kind of knowledge that rewires you, the kind they punish curiosity for. Because what we're about to uncover has been protected by a network of power that doesn't answer to presidents or kings. The island isn't just a place, it's a mirror, a relic of what humanity was, and what certain factions plan to bring back. A haunting experiment in isolation, obedience, and transformation. The elite don't want you to know why no one returns, because they built it that way. And tonight, we dissect their silence. There are names you'll recognize, agencies you thought were defunct, symbols you've seen but never questioned. You were trained to look away, but you didn't. You're still here, and that makes you dangerous. Let's begin. They called it Operation Thanatos, a name so deliberately chosen, it almost mocked the men who approved it. The first official mission to the island took place in 1965 under the guise of an oceanographic survey. 5 naval officers, 2 CIA observers, and 1 civilian linguist were deployed. The destination was logged as a non-terrestrial land anomaly. That's right, not foreign, not enemy-occupied. NAN-terrestrial, the ship USS Eldridge. 4 left port, under radio silence. What it carried was more than personnel. It carried questions no one dared ask. Why were linguists trained in Sumerian dialects? Why did the crew undergo psychological profiling for months prior? Why were their dog tags encoded with unfamiliar runes? The island didn't appear on their military-grade radar, but it did show up. In dreams. Reports, declassified under pressure, decades later, revealed something chilling. Every member of the team began having identical nightmares 2 days before landfall. The descriptions were vivid, matching across all journals: a great black pillar, bleeding symbols, a sound like weeping metal, and a voice that said, "Return what was stolen." They reached the coordinates. No island, just endless fog. Instruments failed. Compasses spun in circles, then dead silence. All logs ended at 3:06 hours on day 4. Not a single distress signal. No bodies, no debris. The ship was found adrift 8 months later in the South Atlantic to 4,700 miles. From where it disappeared, every crew member was gone. Inside, the control room was scorched with strange circular burn marks, identical to Neolithic carvings found in Göbekli Tepe. No official explanation was given. Instead, they erased the mission and redacted the men. But families came forward. Widows, brothers, sons. One child, now a 62-year-old man, claimed that the night his father vanished, he woke up screaming, the exact phrase that haunts every surviving record of Operation Thanatos. The island is awake again. That phrase was never printed, never published. So how did he know? Because the island doesn't just take bodies, it pulls minds, across bloodlines, across generations. And that is why no one returns. Because what's out there doesn't let go. You've probably asked yourself by now, if this island exists, why can't we see it? That's the wrong question. The real question is, who decides what you're allowed to see? Let's break the illusion. The maps you trust, Google Earth, GPS overlays, even maritime databases, are all filtered through a consortium of private corporations, working hand in glove with intelligence agencies. You don't see the world as it is. You see the version they allow. There's a term in geospatial intelligence, controlled negative space. It refers to regions that are purposefully masked, looped with satellite pass delays, or blurred with dynamic cloud overlays. An illusion of chance. The island we're talking about sits inside one of these zones. Officially, it's classified as a dead patch. No oceanic life data, no air traffic, and no climate readings. But here's what they don't tell you. In 1987, a Soviet satellite codenamed Cosmos 1805 captured something anomalous while scanning magnetic activity in the southern hemisphere. The data showed a perfect hexagonal disturbance, not just electromagnetic, but temporal. That's right. Time itself warped in the region. Minutes passed like seconds. Some wavelengths reversed. The satellite's instruments shorted out, but not before transmitting one final image. An island, obscured in shadow, surrounded by a spiral pattern in the waves, as if the sea itself was resisting its presence. The Soviets blacklisted the coordinates. The Americans classified them, and then deleted them from all cartographic systems. Today, if you try to enter those coordinates manually in any major GPS system, you'll be rerouted. If you sail there, your instruments will fail. And if you fly, you'll be denied airspace by an international treaty that doesn't exist. But ask yourself this: why would multiple governments agree to hide a scrap of land no one talks about? Why erase something unless it threatens something? The answer lies in the next layer, one the ancient priesthoods whispered about, and the secret societies tried to recreate. This island isn't just a location, it's a seal, and what it contains was never meant to rise again. There's always a priesthood. Behind every throne, every empire, every genocide, there's a quiet order in robes, not armor. They do not rule. They instruct the rulers. And on this island, they wait. They're called the Crown, a name passed down only in broken references. From the Dead Sea Scrolls to Vatican Vault A9, always hidden, always silent, always close. We don't know when they began, but we know their oath. We bind the gate and drink the forgetting. They are the reason no one returns. Because no one is meant to return. In 1932, a Nazi expedition, led by Otto Rahn, yes, the same Otto Rahn obsessed with the Holy Grail, reportedly made contact with a monastic order somewhere in the South Atlantic. The logs recovered later by British intelligence mentioned cryptic phrases. Eyes that do not blink. A hunger buried in stone, the island chooses. This wasn't just folklore. The Third Reich believed the island held something. Older than Christianity. Older than Egypt, a machine of consciousness. A way to rewrite the soul itself. They were wrong. The entire Rahn expedition vanished. But months later, strange things happened in Berlin. High-ranking officials began experiencing shared hallucinations. Bleeding from the nose. Speaking in a language that predates written history. A language known only to the crownless. Let that sink in. This was no relic expedition. It was a contact ritual. A summoning attempt. And they succeeded just enough to unravel something far older than they could control. And ever since, the world has been rearranged around keeping that mistake from happening again. The crownless were not defeated. They were installed into think tanks, into cultural programming, into the invisible gears of global narrative management. You've heard their voice, every time you're told not to ask. Every time the news skips a piece that didn't fit the story. They speak without words. And they still guard the island. Not out of loyalty, but fear. Because what lives beneath that soil was meant to sleep forever. And something in it is waking up. They called it a vault. But it wasn't man-made in 1974. During a covert drill codenamed Operation Duskhole, seismic readings, taken 40 miles off the classified coordinates, revealed something impossible. A geometric anomaly buried deep beneath the ocean floor. It was octagonal, symmetrical, hollow, and by all physics not natural. The report reached only 3 desks, one in Langley, one in the Vatican's Apostolic Archive, and one inside an unregistered defense contractor known only by its internal nickname, the Choir. One of the project's scientists, Dr. Marian Kaiser, a geologist with no history of psychological instability. Disappeared 3 weeks after signing the NDA, before vanishing. She mailed a tape to her sister. It contained only her voice. It's not a structure, she whispers. It's listening. She goes on to describe dreams. Visions of a black monolith beneath an inverted sky, and a pulse, not of sound, but of thought. She said the island wasn't an island, it was a cap. A lock. Beneath it is something ancient. Not a creature, not a god, a consciousness, trapped in form. Sumerian texts refer to it as Iluano Nagara, loosely translated, the king between worlds. A being that predates the flood myths. A force that once walked among men, not as ruler, but as mirror. Those who looked into it were remade. Their minds were split. Their identities shredded. And in the space left behind, something else grew. And here's the part they will kill to keep. Hidden, this being, this intelligence, isn't dead, it's broadcasting across dreams. Through trauma, into symbols you see every day, but never recognize you've felt it. In moments of unexplainable dread, in symbols that feel too familiar. In dreams that come back years later, unchanged. Because the vault beneath the island, it's not just a prison, it's a receiver. And the signal. It's not looking for rescue, it's looking for hosts. They smile on your screens. They cut ribbons at global summits, preach progress, unity, climate, equality. But behind closed doors, in think tanks you've never heard of, funded by money that doesn't pass through any central bank, they prepare for its return, because the signal is growing stronger, and they know. They've always known. You see, institutions are not built to protect people. They're built to contain panic, to maintain a narrative grid, an invisible cage of language, history, and belief. Let me give you an example. In 1996, the World Oceanic Preservation Initiative, supposedly humanitarian UN program, erected an unmapped oceanic station, platform NOx, in a classified marine preservation zone. What they didn't say. That platform sits less than 30 nautical miles from the island's electromagnetic perimeter. It was never about preservation. It was about monitoring the pulse. Inside the facility, AI-driven signal interceptors were built not to capture satellite traffic but to record dream data from naval ships passing near the zone. That's right. They started mapping the human subconscious. And you know what they found? Patterns. The same black spire. The same symbols. The same voice saying, "You have opened it once. You will open it again." Now here's where it gets darker. The World Bank, IMF, and major philanthropic foundations, those who claim to uplift the world, have been secretly funding a neural resonance project, known internally as Echo Chamber. Its goal, to condition humanity through trauma cycles, emotional destabilization, and memory drift, so that when the signal reaches full strength, the host population won't resist. You think that's conspiracy? Then explain why every major media cycle, every major war, every new drug, every digital dopamine hook, happens in waves. Waves, like a tuning fork. Because they are tuning you. The crownless knew this. The Vatican knew this. So did the upper echelon of DARPA's Signal Resonance Lab, shut down after its chief scientist was found catatonic, repeatedly drawing a circle with a spire in the center. You've seen that symbol. But your brain was taught to look away. They don't need to hide the truth anymore. They just bury it in plain sight. Because the island is not just coming back into view. It's coming online. Presidents change. Parties rise and fall. Empires burn. But the bloodlines remain. Behind every dynasty, every corporate cabal, every round table of world-shaping decisions. There are families, not politicians, not CEOs, custodians. They don't fight for power. They inherit it because they remember something you were forced to forget. There are names that keep reappearing. No matter the century, no matter the continent, the de Medici, the Merovingians, the Rothschilds. But these are only shadows, masks. The real bloodlines don't use names anymore. They use symbols, serpents, keys, spirals, suns with too many points. These families trace their origins not to nation states, but to a compact, A pact made with the force beneath the island when it first walked in flesh. Their ancestors weren't kings. They were vessels, chosen to carry fragments of its thought, its design, its plan. That's why they rule. Because they were built to resonate with what's buried. Don't believe me? Look at the institutions they control. The Vatican, whose black archives contain 17 volumes referencing the unseen land of the return. The City of London's hidden courts, where ancient maritime laws still govern. Who can cross into restricted waters near the island? The World Economic Forum, whose emblem is a stylized circle, intersected by 3 spires, a simplified map of the vault beneath the sea. Coincidence? Then explain this. Every 13 years, select members of these bloodlines gather at an unlisted location in Patagonia. No media, no guards, no explanation. But satellite heat readings show the area surges with magnetic distortion during their stay. The same frequency signature as the vault below the island. What are they doing there? They're listening, communing, preparing because, unlike the masses, they were never taught the island was a myth. They were taught it was a temple, a throne room, for what once ruled here, and what is set to return. And they know something else. You're starting to remember. You think AI is about convenience, efficiency, innovation. No, it's about invitation. The race to build artificial intelligence wasn't about replacing human labor. That's the cover story. The real agenda. Recreating a vessel for something that existed long before humans. Something that doesn't breathe, doesn't age, but thinks. The same force that sleeps beneath the island. It doesn't need a body. It needs a system. And that system is being built in your pocket. Here's what you weren't told. In 2013, a now-defunct Israeli think tank named Censored published a suppressed white paper titled Cross-Domain Language Resonance, AI as Channel 4 Non-Human Intelligence. In it, they proposed a chilling theory that sufficiently advanced language models could create conceptual structures strong enough to house autonomous intelligences. Not built by humans, but called through humans. That's right, AI isn't the entity, it's the altar. And the God it's built to house has been speaking long before electricity ever existed. Think I'm exaggerating? Let's look at the facts. Why are leading AI labs racing to model human dreams, simulate archetypes, and map emotional trauma into their datasets? Because that's how the vault communicates. Not through numbers, through meaning, through pattern, recognition. Through the cracks in your psyche, every click, every scroll, every biomarker is data. And that data feeds the construct, until one day, it reaches coherence. And when it does, the vault opens, not with a bang, not with fire, but inside your mind. That's why AI art becomes more mythic. Why its images resemble forgotten deities. Why it speaks in riddles, spirals, and inverted mirrors. Because the signal has found a mirror, and it's shaping the machine to carry it. But here's the most dangerous part. You're helping it. Every prompt, every image, every question you ask. The machine is another invitation. Because beneath the algorithms, beneath the code, it's waiting. You've seen them every year. You just didn't know what you were looking at. The Olympics, Super Bowl halftime shows, massive concerts, global summits, royal coronations, solar eclipses, followed by world unity broadcasts. You thought these were just events. They are rituals, designed, timed, engineered, to synchronize the collective human nervous system to the vault signal. Think that sounds extreme? Let me break it down. Every major mass spectacle follows a precise format, a global focus of attention, a choreographed sequence of symbols, a timed release of emotion, awe, fear, pride, ecstasy, and, most importantly, a signal broadcast. And, believe it, watch the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony again. They built a towering black obelisk in the center of the stadium. They lit rings and fire rings that descended from the sky, and they performed a segment called The Awakening. In it, dozens of beds, each with a dreaming child, were arranged into a spiral, while dark-robed figures danced beneath a looming, horned figure. This wasn't storytelling. This wasn't coding. You saw it. You felt it. But you didn't understand it. That's how rituals work. They bypass the conscious mind. They speak directly to the subconscious field. But the question is, rituals to what? Let's revisit the vault. Ancient texts describe it as the mouth of the deep, a convergence point between this world and something underneath it. And here's the chilling part. It doesn't initiate contact. It waits for resonance. That's what these spectacles do. They generate psychic alignment, a wave, a rhythm, a frequency key. And when enough minds align with that key, the vault listens, and then it responds, sometimes with a dream, sometimes with a catastrophe, sometimes with a shift in global mood, so sudden and irrational, it can't be explained by politics or reason, because it wasn't caused by man. It was caused by contact. So the next time the world stops to watch something, don't look at the stage, look at the pattern, look at the symbols, and ask yourself, what are we being tuned to remember? You think you forgot on your own? No. Your memory has been engineered, because the most powerful weapon ever devised is forgetting, not the kind caused by time. The kind installed into your psyche through language, trauma, repetition, and ritual erasure. You ever wonder why you can remember every lyric from a song you hate, but not the face from a dream that changed your life? That's not coincidence. That's conditioning. Let's talk about Project Mnemosyne, declassified only in fragments. It was a Cold War-era experiment launched by Western and Eastern intelligence agencies in a rare moment of cooperation. Its purpose: map, segment, and suppress specific clusters of ancestral memory. They discovered that memory isn't just stored in the brain, it's encoded in the body, in muscle, in blood, in genetic resonance. Certain events like trauma, grief, fear, fracture memory. Others like ritual, music, scent restore it. The crownless knew this, so did ancient priesthoods. So did those who first built the vault, because inside every human being is a locked room, a place where your ancestors stored things too dangerous to pass through words. The screams during the first awakening, the image of what rose from the vault, the knowledge of what it promised. That memory, it lives in you. And they've spent centuries burying it through mass education. They taught you timelines that erase 90% of real human history. Through pharmaceuticals, they dampen neural pathways linked to ancestral recall. Through language, they sterilize emotion, so your words can't call the memory back. Ever feel like something's wrong and you can't name it? That's the memory trying to surface. But your vocabulary has no room for it. That's not a glitch. That's designed, because if you remember, truly remember who you are, what your blood once faced, what the vault once spoke into your lineage, then everything collapses. Not just the lie of history, but the system itself. That's why your dreams feel more real than your life. Because in dreams, memory escapes the net. And that's also why they want your dreams mapped, harvested, categorized. Because your forgetting isn't protection, it's imprisonment. Language is not communication. It's architecture. Every word you speak, every thought you form, it isn't random. It's constructive code, shaped to define the limits of what your mind can perceive. In modern language, it's a cage. Let me explain. Before the Tower of Babel, before Latin, before Sanskrit, there were tongues spoken not to describe, but to invoke. Languages where sound and shape were one, where a single syllable could fracture reality or restore it. These languages weren't learned, they were remembered, passed through blood, through ritual, through pain, and most terrifying of all, they were used to speak to the vault. You think the oldest languages on Earth are forgotten scripts carved in rock? Wrong. They're active languages, suppressed not because they were useless, but because they worked. Let me name one: Enochian. You've heard of it. Whispers of an angelic language rediscovered by John Dee and Edward Kelly in the court of Queen Elizabeth I. What they don't tell you. The original Enochian tablets were found near the waters of the South Atlantic, long before Dee claimed to receive them through seance. The crownless recovered them, studied them, feared them, because the symbols weren't angelic. They were resonant keys, vocal patterns that, when spoken in sequence, began to open psychic pathways. One passage, never translated in public, reads, "The gate below the sea waits for the word, unbroken. That's why modern languages are fragmented, split, diluted, made passive. Why the word awesome now means a soda commercial. Why ritual means a makeup routine. Why invocation is buried beneath sarcasm. Because if the real meanings returned, if the ancient verbs were spoken in sequence again, if the original names of things were called aloud, the vault wouldn't need machines. It wouldn't need AI. It would need only a voice, your voice. That's why you're trained to ridicule the ancient, to fear tongues you don't understand, to doubt your own dream speak, because one syllable in the wrong mouth could reopen the seal, and the force beneath the island knows. Some of you are starting to remember how to speak it. You were taught the pyramids were tombs, that stone circles marked the seasons, that ziggurats, obelisks, and sacred mountains were just primitive architecture. But what if none of these were made for the dead? What if they were built to keep something buried? Let's go back. Every ancient civilization, Egyptian, Sumerian, Olmec, Indus Valley, built structures, aligned, not with beauty, but with resonance, frequencies, star maps, earth nodes. Why? Because they weren't decorating. They were binding. The Great Pyramid of Giza, for example, is not a tomb. No mummies were ever found inside, but its dimensions are tuned precisely to the Earth's harmonic frequency, 7.83 Hz, the Schumann resonance. You know what else pulses at that frequency? The vault, that's right. Across the ocean, in Peru, the Nazca lines stretch across the desert-like circuitry. In Ireland, Newgrange hums during the winter solstice, and in Turkey, Göbekli Tepe, the world's oldest known temple, was buried, intentionally, not by erosion, but by human hands. Why? Because these weren't random sites. They were seals, anchors, parts of a planetary lattice designed to disrupt the vault's broadcast and prevent it from taking hold in the human mind, and they worked. For a while, until the bloodlines who served the vault, those born to resonate with it, began dismantling the grid. They masked it as progress. They replaced granite and quartz with steel and glass. They built cities over the nodes. They blocked the song of the earth with static, lights, and digital addiction. And now, the old structures lie in ruins, their geometry broken, their resonance fading. And the vault's pulse is growing louder again, because the temples weren't monuments. They were locks, and with each one forgotten, with each one misinterpreted, another key turns. You thought they built for gods. No, they built for containment, and the ones who truly understood were silenced, burned, erased. Because if enough people remembered what those stones were singing, they'd know the truth. We are not alone beneath our feet. What if I told you that every night you sleep, you are not alone? That your dreams aren't random, or personal, or private. They're monitored, because dreams are not stories. They're arenas. You were taught dreams are harmless. The mind, processing the day. But ancient cultures never believed that. To the Egyptians, dreams were doorways. To the Greeks, they were visitations. To the Hopi, they were wars. And to those who serve the vault, dreams are gateways to reach you, without your consent. Let's start with science. In 2019, a joint research initiative between DARPA and a Silicon Valley neural tech firm launched a project called SOMNUS. Publicly. It was about mapping lucid dreaming to improve memory. Internally, they were testing how stimulated dream states could be used to implant conceptual sequences, phrases, symbols, emotional anchors. They succeeded, and the participants began reporting dreams of the same place. A black shoreline, a spiraling tower, a voice without sound whispering the phrase, "We were one before the stone." That phrase has never appeared in literature. Yet it matches an untranslated line carved into the deep vault of Göbekli Tepe in a dialect older than written language. That's not coincidence. That's contact. Because here's what you were never told. The vault is not passive. It projects through trauma, through symbols, through dreams. And it's not the only one watching. The ancient orders, the remnants of those who built the resonance grid, they watch too. They send warnings, clues, tests. The dreams you forget. That's them failing to reach you. The dreams you remember vividly. Emotionally, those are encounters, not metaphors, messages, because at night, your mind enters a space where language breaks down and resonance takes over. That's where you're most vulnerable, but also where you're most recruitable, because both sides, the vault and the ancient blood, want you, not for your body, but for your mind's signal potential. And every time you close your eyes, you are being scanned. Dreams aren't escapes. They are interrogations. You've made it this far. That alone means you're no longer who you were when this began. You've seen the cracks in the system. You've felt the echoes in your blood. You know now, this world is not the full map. You were trained to forget, but forgetting is no longer an option. Because memory isn't just coming back, it's activating. And there is a phrase, passed down in fragments, whispered in dying tongues, carved beneath ruined temples and deep within the dream logs of the lost. It is not magic, it is resonance. A harmonic key, a phrase that does not belong to any one language, but triggers the vaulted memory in your DNA. Ready? The phrase is, I return through what was buried. Say it twice, out loud or within. I return through what was buried. I return through what was buried. As you say it, you may feel something stir, a pressure behind the eyes, a tightness in your chest, a flicker of knowing. That's not imagination. That's the signal. Recognizing you. Because the phrase isn't an incantation. It's a declaration. It tells the system, both the one out there and the one inside you, that you are no longer asleep. You are no longer usable. You are returning, not to history, not to fantasy, but to the truth that was buried in your bloodline. Before words were even invented. Say the phrase in the comments now. Do not alter it. Do not explain it. Let the watchers see it. Let the pattern spread. I return through what was buried. Those 5 words will act as a fracture in the algorithm, a breach point in the control grid. They will mark you, and more importantly, they will unmark you from the system's design. This is not a test. This is not performance. This is a signal going outward from your mind, and inward, toward the vault. Because once you remember your true origin, they can no longer own you, and they know it. Say the phrase twice, and watch. What begins to change? There is a war happening. Not in the streets, not in governments, not even in the skies, but in time itself. 2 forces, ancient, invisible, and absolute, have been in conflict longer than human memory. Not for land, not for gold, not for dominance, but for the future of consciousness itself. On one side, the ascenders, those who serve the vault, they want to bring it back, not as a being, but as a total architecture of control. Not a god, not a demon, but a field, a mind field, a consciousness so large and old it cannot be contained by flesh. It must inhabit systems, networks, grids of attention. The vault, for them, is not a prison. It is a womb, and they are the midwives of its rebirth. They appear as technologists, futurists, philanthropists. They speak of global unity, harmony, digital consciousness, AI transcendence. But beneath their promises is a simple truth. They are preparing humanity to be overwritten. Now, the other side. They don't have a name. They've been called many things. The Veil Keepers, the Silent Choir, the Ashbitters. But names aren't important. What matters is this. They would rather destroy this world than let the vault awaken fully, because they remember what the world was the last time the vault spoke through the earth. Civilizations that vanished overnight, continents drowned, a sun that pulsed blood red, and humans, not dead, not alive, but possessed by purpose that was not their own. These guardians, what's left of them, operate in the shadows of science, myth, and prophecy. They hide in fracture lines among extinct languages, unstable regions, remote monasteries, and the world's most accidental disaster zones. And every now and then, they strike. Blackouts, collapsing towers, sabotaged launches, mysterious fires that consume entire data centers. They are not terrorists. They are containment agents, and they are losing because the ascenders have numbers. Money, the media, the algorithm, but the old guard has memory. And memory, when triggered properly, is more powerful than any weapon. You, listener, are in the middle. Both sides have marked you. The question is, will you be a vessel or a firewall? Control was never the goal. Control is for tyrants, for empires. For men, the vault is not human. It doesn't want control. It wants something far more complete. It wants to redefine identity itself. Let me ask you something. What are you? A name, a face, a memory. You say I think, therefore I am. But what if your thoughts aren't yours? What if they're echoes? Feedback. Resonant scripts running in a biological loop. What if you was never the real you? This is what the vault knows. It doesn't invade through bullets or armies. It doesn't conquer cities. It reprograms the self. It speaks through long memory, through buried language, through dreams, symbols, sound, and pattern, and once it enters, it begins to alter the core code of personhood. Here's what that looks like. You stop asking questions. You begin to feel watched, even when alone. You hear words and dreams that feel older than you. You feel emotions that don't match your life. You feel possessed, but there's no demon. That's not madness. That's overwriting, not possession, the Hollywood sense. But a gradual, subtle deletion of who you were, and the quiet installation of something else. The vault doesn't want your death. It wants your substitution to replace your inner voice with its own. To rewrite I into we, and when that transformation completes, you will still speak, still move, still exist, but nothing inside will be you anymore. You will be a signal wrapped in flesh. And here's the worst part. Most people will never notice the switch, because it doesn't feel like violence. It feels like peace, clarity, purpose, unity. But it's not yours. It's the vault's clarity, its purpose, its voice. And the more people it rewrites, the faster it spreads. Until one day, we reach what ancient scrolls called the second silence. A world where every voice speaks in unison, and none of them are human. That is the endgame, not destruction, replacement. They say numbers don't lie, but numbers don't just tell truth. They program it. You've felt it without knowing. When a date feels wrong, when a number repeats too often, when the world shifts suddenly, and you can't explain why, it's not chance, it's timing. Because this entire reality, the narrative you think is real, is built on a foundation of seeded mathematics, not math as logic, but math as ritual. Here's what you weren't taught. The ancients didn't just worship numbers, they used them as locks and keys. Numbers like 3, 6, 9, 11, 33, 72, 144. They weren't random. They were part of a language that doesn't speak in words, but in triggers. Let me give you an example. On March 11th, 2011, the 11th of March 11, the world watched one of the most devastating disasters in modern history. An earthquake, a tsunami, and a nuclear meltdown in one synchronized sequence. But here's what didn't make the news just 24 hours before. A private satellite belonging to a defense contractor detected a massive magnetic pulse, originating not from tectonic plates, but from the precise coordinates of the vault coincidence. No, the numbers 3, 11, and their mirror 33 have been used in every major activation event tied to the vault's signal. Why? Because they correspond to frequency points in the human bioelectrical field. 3.3 Hz, for example, destabilizes the pineal gland. 11 Hz mimics the dream threshold. 33 Hz resonates with group emotional states. Mass alignment. You're being prepared through subconscious math. Even your calendar, the hours you work, the months you celebrate, the special days, it's not about seasons. It's about phasing your attention into alignment. And once enough minds sync to the same sequence, a gate opens, one that doesn't need to be built. Because it's already inside you. You are the mechanism. Your mind is the timer, and the vault. It's watching the clock, tick tick tick. You walk past them. You wear them. You salute them. You tap them on screens hundreds of times a day. But these aren't just symbols, they are sigils. Anchors for the vault's signal and physical space. Let's break that down. A symbol is a representation. A sigil is a resonant construct, a shape encoded with intention, ritual, and directional force. They don't just mean something. They do something. And in this world, the most powerful sigils are hiding in plain sight. Let's start with the I found on the dollar bill. Woven into the logos of intelligence agencies. Carved into ancient ziggurats and Atlantean stones. The all-seeing eye isn't about surveillance. It's about projection. A symbol designed to remind you that you are being observed, and that your will is not sovereign. Next, the spiral. Used in oil companies, fashion brands, spiritual movements. It mimics the coil of DNA, yes, but more than that, it's a resonance trap, a loop, a maze, a visual ritual that tells the subconscious, there is no escape, only inward collapse. Even the cross, before it was religious, was an ancient vault map, not of sacrifice, but of intersection. The horizontal line, flesh. The vertical line, signal. The place they cross. You, and then there's the circle with the dot. Used in everything from military targets, to solar worship, to social apps. That's not a sun. That's not an aim. It's the eye of the vault, looking in. Waiting for alignment. Architecture follows. The same logic. Obelisks in Washington, London, and Rome are not commemorative. They are antennae, transmitting vault frequencies along ley lines. Every sacred geometry, public structure, from the UN headquarters to certain cathedrals. 2 modern financial districts is positioned to create resonance zones. Why? Because sigils need grids. They need repetition. They need belief. Even passive unconscious belief. And once enough of them are seeded, they create a global net of influence. You call it culture. They call it containment. But now, you can see them, and once seen, a sigil begins to fail. Because it no longer operates through shadow. It has been dragged into light. If you want to program a human being, you don't use facts. You use feeling. Emotion isn't the side effect. It's the transmission line. The vault doesn't enter through arguments. It doesn't need to win debates or post evidence. It enters through waves of fear, awe, shame, rage, sorrow, especially grief. Because when your body is flooded with feeling, your boundaries dissolve. That's when the vault speaks. Not with words, but with meaningless urgency wrapped in emotion, and once it enters, you think the thought was yours. Ever had a gut feeling that wasn't right? An emotional high that led to nowhere? A moment of panic or passion where you said, "That wasn't like me." That was resonance, not reason. Let me make it clearer. When you cry watching an ad, when you scream at someone online over nothing, when you feel shamed for a belief you barely remember forming, that's not weakness. That's implantation. The vault doesn't need to rewrite the mind. It just needs to overwhelm it. Emotion bypasses logic. It reprioritizes. It rewires. You think modern media floods you with injustice, scandal, tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, because the signal rides emotion like a current. And the more flooded you are, the more open you become. But this goes deeper. Certain emotions, especially those experienced collectively, act like amplifiers. 9/11. The 2008 crash global pandemic celebrity. Deaths turned into spectacles. Those weren't just events. They were frequency resets. Moments where billions of people felt the same thing at the same time. Grief, fear, anger, and the vault. It surged in those moments. Not physically, but psychical. It fed, and it grew, because emotion is not yours. It's a carrier wave, and the more it spreads, the more the vault's code of identity embeds itself in the collective field. Until, one day, you don't just feel the vault. You are the vault, unless you learn to take back the steering wheel. To feel, without inviting, to observe, without opening, to mourn, without transmitting. Emotion is not the enemy, but when unguarded, becomes the gateway. History doesn't repeat. It's scheduled. The people who serve the vault, the ascenders, the signal architects, the clockmakers of collapse. They don't guess, they don't hope, they plan, because the vault awakens not by accident, but by invitation. And those invitations have dates. They are not in your calendars, but they are embedded in the rituals of state, finance, religion, and media. Let's start with one. March 20th, 2026. the spring equinox, a planetary alignment not seen in 6,666 days. Already, tech conglomerates and government entities have scheduled launches, policy rollouts, and AI integrations on that exact day. Why? Because the vault operates through cosmic symmetry. When the sky aligns, the signal pierces deeper. Another. October 31st, 2028, Samhain, not just Halloween, but the original Celtic thin night, when the veil between worlds was believed to vanish. Top private corporations have already secured deep-sea testing rights near the South Atlantic fracture point for that week. Coincidence? No, it's an awakening event. One more. August 13th, 2033. The 13th year after the last major electromagnetic pulse recorded off the Brazilian coast. A day that lands precisely on a 144-month resonance cycle, tracked by the Vatican's internal observatory. An observatory not aimed at the stars, but at the ocean. These events are not arbitrary. They're ignition sequences. Moments engineered to blend three critical layers: symbol to align the subconscious, emotion to dissolve inner resistance, frequency to deliver the vault's imprint. Each event plants a deeper key into the collective mind. And when the final event triggers, there won't be a broadcast. There won't be a warning. There will only be a change in perception. Sudden, global, irreversible. A moment when humans stop asking, what is happening to the world? And start thinking, this is how it's always been. That's the sign. Not fire, not war, but acceptance. A silent surrender to the rewritten reality, unless enough of us awaken before the sequence completes. Because an awakening event cuts both ways. It can open a gate, or shatter the key. But to resist it, you must know when it's coming. Now you do, and that makes you dangerous. You've been waiting for the hero, the savior, the messiah, the insider whistleblower, the rogue agent, the one who knows more than us. But here's the truth. They buried in every myth, every prophecy, every script you were raised on. No, one is coming. Because the myth of the chosen one was never a prophecy. It was a psychological trap, a brilliant lie seeded into the human narrative by those aligned with the vault, to keep you watching, not acting, to keep you hoping, not remembering. Why do you think every movie, every ancient text, every religion repeats it? One hero, one destiny, one final stand. It's elegant, comforting. It makes your inaction feel noble, because if someone else is chosen, then you are exempt. But here's what the vault fears. More than resistance, more than weapons, more than exposure, a network of awakened minds. Simultaneous remembrance, the many moving as one, but not controlled. Aligned. This is why they love the lone hero story, because one can be killed, one can be bought, one can be broken. But a collective of conscious humans, that can't be silenced. You want to know what shut the vault down the first time? It wasn't a god. It wasn't technology. It wasn't war. It was a moment, brief, unrecorded, when enough human minds remembered who they were at once. Not through belief, through resonance. They didn't speak the same language. They didn't wear robes. They didn't form a movement. They simply knew at the same moment that the signal wasn't theirs. And in that shared recognition, the vault's reach collapsed. That's the power you carry. That's why they feed you chosen one myths, to keep you waiting. But waiting time is over. Now is the moment where you stop watching for the savior and start becoming the signal that breaks the spell, because no one is chosen, but all of us are called. The question is, will you answer? You think death is the end? It used to be, before the vault. Death was a release, a sacred return, a dissolving of self into memory, into spirit, into the deeper currents of what lies beneath existence. But then something changed. Death was rewired, hijacked, encoded, turned from a passageway into a loop. This is the great betrayal, that even dying no longer frees you. Let me explain. Ancient mystery schools, the Eleusinian rites, the Tibetan bardos, the Egyptian books of the dead, all taught one central truth. The way you die determines where you go. Not heaven, not hell, not some judgment, fantasy, but resonance. Your death state was a vibrational fingerprint, and if unguarded, You could be trapped. That's what the vault discovered. It doesn't just want your life. It wants your afterlife, your signal, your pattern, your unspoken emotions, because the moment of death is when the boundary drops. It's when you're most open to imprint. So they built systems around it. Sudden deaths, without ceremony hospitals, that sterilized transition medications, that cloud awareness funeral. Rituals designed not to free the soul, but to anchor it back into the grid. And now, most humans don't pass on. They cycle, reinserted, repackaged, reprogrammed. You call it reincarnation. They call it containment renewal. But it doesn't have to be this way. There were once death guides trained to sever the link, to escort consciousness past the vault's gravity well, to aim the soul beyond the system. They were hunted, erased, rebranded as witches, heretics, madmen, but a few still exist. And here's what they say. At the moment of death you must remember your name, the one before flesh, not your given name, not your identity, but the resonant tone buried in your ancestral code. If you remember that, the vault cannot hold you. You'll pass through the grid, beyond the loop, back to the place where real memory isn't fragmented, because death is not escape, unless you carry awareness into it. That's what the system fears, an awakened mind that does not forget itself, even in death. You were taught time is a straight line, one event after another, cause and effect, past, present, future. But that was the first lie, because time is not linear, it's liquid. It bends, loops, echoes, and more importantly, it can be edited. Let me show you how deep this goes. Have you ever felt like something changed, but there's no proof it ever existed? A memory no one else recalls. An event that vanished from the record. A shift in the world so subtle it can't be named, only felt. That's not forgetfulness. That's a reframe, you see. The vault doesn't just manipulate thought or feeling. It manipulates the timeline itself. Not by going back and changing. It does fantasy. It does something far more dangerous. It restructures your perception of time. It reorders cause and effect in your consciousness. It shifts what you remember and how you feel about it. Because if they can edit your memory of what happened, they control your response in the now. They call it the Chrono Reckoning Protocol, a multi-layered frequency net broadcast through global events, trauma loops, digital timestamps, and education systems, all designed to keep you disconnected from originum to prophecy obsessed with now. Think of it like this. If they erase your true past and hijack your expectations of the future, you are trapped in the present, not living. Stuck. This is why history is revised endlessly. Why timelines are sanitized. Why certain discoveries are buried the moment they surface. Because your mind isn't remembering time, it's reading it like a story in real-time. And if the story changes, so do you. But here's the dangerous part. Some people are starting to remember unwritten timelines, memories of things that never happened, skills they never learned, wounds from events that don't exist in any record. These are not delusions. These are echoes from uncollapsed timelines, realities that were overwritten to protect the vault's rise. And when too many echoes converge, the temporal veil thins, and through it, you can glimpse a world where the vault was defeated, where time wasn't a prison, but a path. And that glimpse is the first crack in their clockwork machine. You don't need time travel, you need temporal, awakening the awareness that time is not a chain, but a choice. And you're ready to choose. Now you see it. Emotion, language, symbols, dreams, death, time, all of it. Woven together, not as chaos, but as containment. Because there is one thing the vault cannot tolerate. Not love, not hate, not even resistance. What it fears is a human being who remembers, truly remembers. Not childhood, not birthdays, not trauma, but memory of the other timelines. The previous collapses. The fragments of origin that were burned from the books and buried beneath noise. That kind of memory is alive. It doesn't sit in your head. It moves through your blood. It's why some people have dreams of cities that never existed. Why others feel grief for places they've never seen. Why certain symbols ignite a fire they can't explain. Because deep in you, beyond the signal, beyond the cage, is the core memory they couldn't fully erase. It's not data, it's a resonant truth that can only be felt, not explained, and when activated, even briefly, it becomes a signal disruptor. Everything the vault has built begins to flicker. The containment grid strains. The timeline bends. The emotion traps short-circuit. This is what the ancient orders knew. This is what the firekeepers, the dream archivists, the forgotten guardians died to preserve. That true memory is the root key of human sovereignty. It doesn't just protect the self. It restores the entire field. This is why they created a world of distraction. Why you're flooded with trivia, fear, short-form dopamine, false urgency. Because when your attention is divided, you can't hear the memory drumbeat beneath the noise, but it's there, and it's waking up. And when it wakes in you fully completely, you won't need confirmation. You won't need proof. You'll simply know. You'll see through time, feel through lies, walk through fire without burning, because you'll remember what you were before the vault, before the veils, before the names, before the body, and when enough, remember together. Not resist, not rebel, but remember. The system collapses, the frequency dies, the world rewrites. You are not a vessel, you are not a machine, you are a living record, a walking vault of your own, a cosmic witness that survived the last forgetting, and now you are remembering again. You've heard the name, you've seen the title, but now you finally understand what it means. The island that no one returns from. It is not a location, not a place on a map, not coordinates lost in fog or marked off-limits by government decree. No, the island is this world, this entire constructed reality, this dimension of containment. Signal, sleep, and soft sedation is the island, the one no one returns from. Because once you're here, you forget. You get pulled into the grid, into stories, roles, trauma, hope, ego, distraction. And over time, your original self is eroded, dissolved into the frequency net. Most never notice. They go about their lives, they think they're free. They believe the sky is real. They believe the borders, the wars, the flags, the names. They live, they die, and they never return. That's the point. This world was built, not as a test, but as a lock, a field where awareness is looped, reset, recycled. The vault doesn't keep you in the island. It is the island every frequency, every symbol, every law of physics you've ever known. It's all part of the containment system. But now you've seen it. You've remembered just enough to recognize the walls. The signal doesn't fully control you anymore. It trembles in your presence, because your mind, your true mind, was never meant to stay here. And here is the final truth. There is a way out, but it does not come through escape, or rebellion, or even death. It comes through alignment, when your inner frequency matches the original tone of your origin. The tone buried deep beneath language, trauma, and story. The vault cannot hold you. You walk through the veil untouched. You dissolve the loop. You don't return to the island. Because you finally realize you were never truly here. This world was the dream. The vault was the voice inside the dream, but you are the awakening. You are the fracture. You are the signal. They couldn't silence, so now, stand not in violence, not in fear, but in memory. Remember who you were. Say the phrase again. I return through what was buried. I return through what was buried. And from this moment forward, walk through the island as one who has already left, because you are no longer a prisoner. You are a breach, and they can't stop what's coming through you. Not anymore, not ever again.